Good morning, students. Today we will discuss observation methods. In last video, we discussed a few observation methods. Today we will discuss mainly observation of physical objects. Let us have a quick revision of the last video and then we'll start. What do you mean by observation? It's a systematic process of recording actual behavioral patterns of people, objects, and events. All, right? You can, well, when you are observing people, that is also a kind of observation. When you observe objects, that is also observation. And you can even observe events as they happen, right? But observation studies gather a wide variety of information about behavior. And it is basically a scientific inquiry when it serves a formulated research purpose. It is planned systematically, it is recorded systematically and related to general propositions rather than just interesting curiosities. And it's a kind of systematic process of recording behavioral pattern of all these things discussed, people, objects, and events. What can be recorded? Physical actions, for example, work patterns, verbal behavior, voice or facial expressions, expressive behavior, spatial relations and locations, traffic patterns, space between the workers, temporal patterns, maybe time required to perform a particular task, it's related to time, physical objects, for example, finished good inventory, raw material or something like that, verbal and pictorial records, for example, content of memoranda. These are the things which can be observed, and so many things can be listed under these categories. We discussed a few examples in our last video for all of them. Categories of observation: human versus mechanical. Human observation means human is doing the observation by himself. There is an observer who is observing everything, either people or object or events, right? Mechanical means we are observing something through a mechanical object, for example, a camera or something like that. Then visible versus hidden observation. Visible, these are some basics related to observation which we should know. Visible observation means the person knows that he is being observed. For example, there is a camera in the room and person knows about it. Or you might be observing the person and person knows that he is being observed. He is the subject of some survey or something like that, right? But when it comes to hidden observation, that means you have hidden a camera inside the room where observation is being done, or you have not told the person, the subject, that you are observing the person on the basis of these questions which you might be asking him, or on the basis of some events happening around him. Then direct observation means you are directly observing something or a person. Direct observation can even be stated as like you do not have to relate anything to any other thing. For example, direct observation can produce a detailed record of events or what people actually do. You do not have to manipulate, you do not have to record anything else related to that observation. For example, records of traffic counts, how many traffics actually pass a light, right? This can be just done. You just have to count the traffic going from that particular light or that particular space, then that is actually direct observation. Researchers using the direct observation method compile data by recording events as they occur. That's it. Nothing else to be done. Respondent is not required to recall an event after it has occurred. You are not going to ask respondent whether you passed from this particular lights or not, this particular road or not. You just have to record that yes, these many vehicles passed from this road. In some situations, it is economical. In some situations, it might not be very economical. It depends on kind of the research going on. This is very economical if you appoint a person on a road and he just counts the passerbys. If you have to install a camera at some certain places just to count number of vehicles passing by, it might become little more costly than hiring a person. So it depends, though it is more more accurate, but still it might be more costly. It depends on your budget as well. Certain data may be obtained more quickly or easily by direct observation. For example, quality of life survey. The way you ask questions, the way people reply, you just have to answer. You just have to record them. You can just record them on the basis of their reply. You do not have to intervene. You do not have to, sometimes you just ask one question in yes or no, and you just notice their facial expressions. That is also a kind of direct observation. But there are some errors associated with direct observation as well. It depends on certain moods, some economic status and their background. So many things are there which needs to be taken care of, and that can actually be posed as observer bias. If he or she, the observer, distort the measurement resulting from the cognitive behavior or actions of witnessing the behavior, then it would be observer bias. Sometimes observer does it naturally. It is not like he's doing it deliberately. It just happens. So, but again, the results are disturbed, right? Results are distorted. So it would be called as observer bias in both the case, whether he has done it deliberately or not. If observer does not record every detail that describes a person's objects and events in a given situation, accuracy may suffer. So it is just that when we talk about direct observation, the observer has to record everything. That's it. Nothing else has to be done, but that has to be recorded properly. But sometimes lot many things are there. Observer speed might not be very good to record everything. So that also would lead to observer bias. Observer might not have understood. He might not have counted something while counting the vehicles passing by, right? So there might be so many chances of error when we hire a human observer for such direct observations. But when it comes to camera observing these things, errors might be minimized. Then contrived observation. What do you mean by contrived observation? Contrived observations are the observations which happens in a particular setting. For example, the creation of an artificial environment to test a hypothesis. When you create a kind of environment to test a particular hypothesis, that is actually called contrived observation. You sometimes try to create some environment, observing subjects in an artificial environment in order to just prove a few things you already know is basically contrived observation. For example, an airline passenger complaining about a meal or poor service from the flight attendant may actually be a researcher recording the flight attendant's reaction on that particular statement he is providing. If situations were not contrived, the research time actually spent on asking and waiting and then observing situations would expand considerably. So sometimes we have to go for contrived observation, because when I ask people normally a question, they might be more interested to tell me because they feel like I'm also on the same opinion. But if I go to them as a researcher, they might not reply accurately, right? So sometimes we have to go for contrived observation as well, and this is really good method. It has proved over years that it is really good. Scientists have given go ahead for this situation after checking it thoroughly. Now, observation of physical objects. In case of observation of physical objects, we actually try to trace evidence on the objects. Trace evidence on the objects. For example, you might be trying to check wear and tear of a book, right? It indicates how often it has been read, though it might be wrong, but sometimes it might be the right way to check it. Or you can take one very famous example of investigation of Arizona household garbage, which revealed many things, though They wanted to check something else, but it revealed many good findings, and they were very interesting. For example, it told them that which baby food is popular, or maybe what kind of food vegetables are coming in the households, right? But so many interesting findings were like the way people report is not actually true about their eating habits, and garbage doesn't lie, right? So it revealed that people consistently underreport the quantity of junk food they eat, and overreport the amount of fruit and diet soda they consume. People actually don't report, but whenever they try to report little less when they have junk food, that means they really know that food is not good for their health, but they do not, and that is why they do not like to report it, but they do eat it more. Because garbage, if garbage has stains like about over like junk food and something like that, then it tells you that yes, people are having more junk food than fruit and vegetables, right? And studies, when it comes to garbage, shows that alcohol consumption is also underreported by 40 to 60%. So that tells us that people actually know what are the good things to eat, what are not the good things, but still they eat. Response latency. It's recording the decision time necessary to make a choice between two alternatives. It is presumed to indicate the strength of preference between alternatives. It is said that if you have got two alternatives and you have to decide one among them, if you take more time, that means both the decisions are very near to each other. They are equally comparable. If you take very less time, that means they are not at all comparable, right? They are poles apart. But the time you take tells us that they were actually very close. The decisions you might have taken, the decision which you have left, these two were very close and both were equally comparable, equally competitive. It is actually hypothesized that the longer a decision maker takes to make a choice between two available alternatives, then closer the two alternatives are in terms of preference. That means they are actually comparable and competitive. The response latency measure is growing more popular nowadays when we have computer assisted data collection methods. With the help of computers, we can collect data easily and we can compare two methods very easily. Over years, it has grown, it is grown popular now, right? So response latency is very important when it comes to decide about the decisions. Content analysis. It is actually a kind of observation regarding written content only. Content analysis obtains data by observing and analyzing the content of advertisements, letters, articles, etc. It deals with the study of the message itself, or it measures the extent of emphasis or omission. For example, you might be studying newspaper, that how things are being reported in the newspaper or something like that. For example, if you want to study companies over years, for example, you want to study 10 companies over 10 years, that means 100 company years, right? So about something, maybe for CSR, corporate social responsibility, you might be willing to check whether companies are doing CSR well or not. In that case also you can go for content analysis. But what you will be doing, you will be checking every company's annual report, their website, and their CSR reports, sustainability reports, every kind of report available for those companies over 10 years. You will collect all of them and then check whether they are actually reporting CSR or not. This can be done in different ways. You can actually go with word count, how many times CSR word comes in, or in how many paragraphs they have described CSR, or how much expenditure they are actually doing on CSR. So it might be word count, it might be lines count, it might be paragraphs count, or it might be qualitative versus quantitative count. These all are the methods of content analysis. For example, one thing can be done that if companies have just reported about CSR, that yes, they are doing CSR, you can point, you can actually mark one, you can give them 1 mark for that. If they have actually told you that yes, they are doing CSR for such and such project, and they have actually spent a lot of money on that, then you can give them 2 points. Or if they have mentioned the actual projects with actual city, people and everything, that means when they have described everything in the in detail, then you can give them highest marks as in 3. If you are going for 1, 2 and 3 marking, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0 means no CSR reporting, 1 means they are talking about CSR, 2 means they are giving some actual details about CSR and that they are doing this and that, and 3 means they are giving they are that 3 means that you also feel like they are trying to give each and every information about the CSR they have done. They are telling about the recipients, they are telling about those people who got benefited from their CSR program, they are telling the actual amount, they told that yes, this is the process through which they have gone. That means they're trying to tell everything, they are not hiding anything. One way to do content analysis is this, that you will be rating company on the basis of their content, what kind of content they are providing. One way is you will be just counting words, another way is you will be counting sentences, then you can count paragraphs, or one way is you can do qualitative or quantitative content analysis, right? There are so many kind of content analysis available, uh, that you can actually categorize them. You can actually write a book on content analysis. Yes, there are very good books available on content analysis as well. Then mechanical observation. Mechanical observation, again, we just discussed in our previous slides, like mechanical observation is basically through some mechanical objects, right? And these mechanical objects are traffic counters, web traffic, scanners, people meter, physiological measures. Traffic counters, how would you count traffic? For example, you have to measure traffic on a road, right? You can just put some scanners, they will be scanning every traffic going through that, or you just have to put something, so as to get the count in. As soon as a traffic goes from there, a vehicle goes from the road, and it will be counted 1, 2, 3 and so on, right? Web traffic is actually counted when you actually visit a web page. When you click on the web page, that would mean a hit, you have just clicked it. But if you actually access some videos or images on that particular web page, or you might access some more content on that, then it would be like major hits. It would be it would be like that you have assessed the website fully. So it depends how you assess a website, and it whether it is just a hit, you have just clicked the website by chance also sometimes, or you have actually visited the website. Then scanners play a very important role. For example, in case of traffic counters also we use scanners sometime, but scanners are used even in public places just for people count as well. Then people meter, how do you use people meter? Like it is generally for people's like reaction plus how they behave in one particular situation. You just measure whether they were happy, they were sad, just their facial expressions. Then physiological measures would tell you about their physiology about something, and there are meters whether they behave well or not about something. And these can further be divided in 4 parts. We'll discuss them in upcoming slides. Physiological meters basically measures basically are related to their psychological behavior and the way they behave when something comes up. Maybe you are giving a statement and you might check their emotional level, whether it goes up or down. Some things can be measured through physiological measures. These are further divided in 4 parts. We will just study them. Monitoring web traffic, we just discussed it here. Hits and page views, whether you just had hit or you actually viewed the page. Jupyter Media Metrics, through Media Metrics, whether you were actually viewing the images only or something else, or you read the whole article or not. Nielsen Net Ratings, it is considered as the best company to rate, to check monitoring web traffic in actual. Physiological, eye tracking, pupillometer, galvanometer, and voice pitch. These 4 are the major physiological observations we have in our analysis. We generally go for these. Number 1, eye tracking observations. This basically record how the subject actually reads or views an advertisement. It is basically to measure unconscious eye movements. This really measure how did you behave while reading something, whether your eyes were behaving normally or some abnormal behavior was shown while reading some good or bad advertisement, right? So this is how you measure people's reaction to something which is not normally stated. Then pupillometer. This device observes and records changes in the diameter of the subject's pupils. Considering all other things constant, if you just notice this, then also you can come to know whether the emotions were high at one particular time or not, when the person was actually reading the advertisement or some news or something like that. Then psychogalvanometer. It is basically, it measures galvanic skin response. It involuntary changes in the electrical resistance of the skin. Assumption is that physiological changes accompany emotional reactions as well. It is basically to just check emotional reactions of people. It will just tell you whether you were emotionally high after reading something or down, right? Then voice pitch analysis. It measures emotional reactions through physiological changes in person's voice. How your voice changes after reading something or after listening to something, whether it was a happy tone or sad tone, or it was high tone or low tone. That also describes a lot of things about our emotions. That's it. Some true false. The reason of observation studies can provide complementary evidence along with other measures for a respondent's true feeling. Is it true? The results of observation studies can actually provide complementary evidence along with other measures for respondent true feelings, because here respondent doesn't know that he is being observed. So observation studies always provide complementary evidence. That means it is true. Second, response latency is the amount of time it takes to make a choice between 2 alternatives. Yes, it is 100% true. It is actually the amount of time it takes. And it tells us that decisions were actually competitive or comparable. Then direct observation is a straightforward attempt to observe and record what naturally occurs. Yes, it is. It is actually naturally, it is actually the record which is actually happening. There is no manipulation in this. So it is true. Next, in observation studies, it is normally not necessary to ask a person who is being observed to state his or her gender, since that characteristic can be observed. Is it? Yes, of course it is. It can be observed. So it is true. At least in normal cases, it can be observed. When it is not observed, you can simply ask, or at least you will come to know with the talks or with other behaviors. Next is, since the observer does not interact with the subject in observation studies, observation is an error-free method of data collection. Up to some extent, it is yes, but it is not actually. It is false. There are several errors associated with observation as well. For example, subjectivity, observer bias, their accuracy of collecting the data, and their interpretation of the data. So there are so many things other than actually recording the data. So it is a false. Next, in observation research, a distortion of measurement resulting from the cognitive behavior or actions of the witnessing observer is called selectivity bias. No, it is not selectivity bias, it is observer bias. We discussed it in PPT. Then a source of error in observation studies is in the interpretation of the meaning of the observation data. Is it? Yes, it is true. Next, when the investigator intervenes to create an artificial environment to test a hypothesis, this approach is called artificial observation. Is it artificial observation? It is basically artificial observation, but it has a name like contrived observation. So it is false. Next is hidden observation studies must be alert to situations in which the subject's right to privacy must be protected. Yes, it is true. When you have hidden observation study in your hand, then you should take care of subject's right to privacy. And it's true. Next, some might see contrived observation as unethical based on the notion of entrapment. Is it? Yes, it is 100% true. Researchers may observe physical phenomena as well as human behavior. Yes, researchers actually observe both physical phenomena as well as human behavior. Like we just discussed, human versus mechanical behavior, both can be observed. Some questions. Discuss the role of observation as a research method and list the types of observable phenomena and give an example of each. You will define what observation is, then you will be listing down all the observable phenomena. For example, physical activities, verbal behavior, expressive behavior, then spatial relations and locations, then temporal patterns, then physical objects, and verbal and pictorial records. And you can give examples for each. We have discussed these examples in our previous video as well. Then second is compare and contrast direct observation and contrived observation. Direct observation here is a straightforward attempt to observe and record what naturally occurs, whereas contrived observation occurs when the investigators intervenes to create an artificial environment to test a hypothesis. So you just discuss both the definitions and then compare them with the help of example. Third is discuss the ethical issues particular to research using observation. What should a researcher consider when collecting observational data? Yes, observation methods introduce a number of ethical issues because sometimes you are not telling the subject that you are actually being that they are actually being observed. So it really raises a lot of questions, a lot of ethical issues. Hidden observations, for example, that raises the maximum ethical issues. So you should take care about that how, how can you take care of things maximum possible. The best you can do is you have to take care of subjects privacy to about their information. That is the most important thing here, and other related things should also be considered. So basically it comes in hidden observations the most. Then explain the observation of physical objects and message content. How would you observe them? Physical objects and message content. It's easier to observe physical objects rather than actual human behavior. Physical phenomena may be the subject of observation study. Physical trace evidences a visible mark. For example, you might observe books as in through wear and tear that how many people have read them, right? Then last is name and define the techniques for measuring physiological reactions. We discussed a few techniques: eye tracking monitor, pupillometer, psychogalvanometer, and voice pitch analysis. Just list them down and just brief them out. That's it. Thank you.